if I may say. I love that. And she has been very courageous about speaking out about her own personal experiences of forced marriage. And we've heard from other survivors today, and it's extremely difficult, I know, even for someone accustomed to public speaking as you are, to speak out. And we're extremely proud that you all can speak to us today. Naz is also a mother of 3 and passionate about leadership, justice and equality. And if I may just give a little bit about her family background. Born in Bradford, Naz was abandoned by her father when she was 6 years old, after her father had run off with their neighbour's 16-year-old daughter. Age 12, Naz was sent to Pakistan, reason being to avoid her mother Zora's violent partner. Zora fatally poisoned the partner because she believed that he was planning to sexually abuse her daughters. And Zora served 14 years in prison for his murder. While Naz was in Pakistan, she was forced into a marriage. And before she was elected as an MP, she was chair of a mental health charity called Sharing Voices in Bradford, and also previously worked as a carer for disabled people, and also as an NHS commissioner and a director of a regional association supporting local councils. Naz, we're extremely honoured to have you here today.
Thank you. Many thanks for that. It's a huge honour to be here and to be able to address you all and talk to you about my experiences. It's interesting because usually when I talk about my experiences, it's usually about my mum's experiences and my life, but this is the first time I'm actually talking about a forced marriage, if you like. So my marriage at the age of 15, I'll explain how it happened. My mum wasn't a part of my forced marriage. In fact, I didn't recognise it as a forced marriage until I was actually in my 20s, 30s even, to be fair. And at the time, I went to Pakistan. I'd been there 2 years and 4 months, and my first cousin, they said, you have to marry him. So somebody came to England. My mum's cousin came to England. My mum was here, and I had a 3-minute conversation with her. What my family said to me was because of my mum's experiences, she'd lost 2 of her brothers who didn't speak to her. And this was the only the brother's son who they wanted me to marry. This was the only brother that had anything to do with my mum, and he was in Pakistan. So they said to me, if you don't marry him, what will happen is, in our language, what they said was, so the graves will never meet. And that's quite emotional, if in Midpuri language, so if you do not get married, is what happened. And your mum gave up her 2 brothers to be able to keep you guys when your dad left, because my uncles originally had said, give up the kids and we'll look after you. And she gave her life up for you, so you are now obliged to, this is the only brother she's got. Do you really want her to lose this only brother? And in England, they said to my mum that your daughter wants to have this marriage. So I had a 3-minute phone call in the neighbour's house back in the days, over 20-something years ago. And in that 3-minute phone call, I said to my mum, whatever you want. And my mum said, whatever you want. And my auntie duly took the phone off me, and that was a done deal. I had a nikah. When I came back to England, I remember my mum didn't come to collect me. And I said to her, she said, why did you do it? And I said, because they said you wanted me to do it. So she said, right, you can go through divorce. But having come from a family where my mother had been divorced, for me, as a 15-year-old, I knew that if I got divorced at that stage, because it would still be a divorce, whether that marriage was consummated or not, the pressure of having that izzat tarnished, as a 15-year-old, I knew that I couldn't do that, because it'd be like mother, like daughter. Mother's gone through a divorce, and now the daughter's going to get a divorce. So I carried on in that relationship, in that marriage. And then I went back at 16, and we had the big wedding, if you like, and re-registered the marriage like you do, because it wasn't legal by British standards. And that was made a big issue out of. George Galloway duly made that an issue at the going and getting my nikah nama from Pakistan. At the time, when I was 15, did I know I was getting married? Was I capable of, I reflect now, and I have an 11-year-old, beautiful 11-year-old daughter. I also have 2 sons, an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old. Does my daughter, even when she's 15, will she understand the concept of marriage? And when I've looked, I have hindsight now, and hindsight's a wonderful thing. And I look at children, and I do lots of them. I'm really passionate about the issue of CSE and child sexual exploitation. I'm doing lots of work locally around that. And I just think for a 15-year-old, even if it's not a 15-year-old, for me, I was a child. My childhood was taken away from me. But when you're forced into a marriage, having had a good marriage, the father of my 3 children, we were married for 11 years, and a lot of that was a very good relationship, and it was, and that's what a marriage is. As much as people might break up and split up and be together or whatever, that's because you have a choice in that relationship. And in that relationship, when I experienced what it was like, it made me reflect on what I didn't have in my forced marriage. So the first time in that forced marriage, we were very different. We were the issue of transatlantic marriages comes into it, because generally when it's a forced marriage, majority of the time it's from a spouse who's from abroad. So the cultural differences are phenomenal. And I was reflecting on that earlier today, because I'm speaking to Rahila about capturing some of my experiences. And one of them was about when I was forced marriage, and what was my first forced marriage, and the first time I was beaten up, and what I experienced. And the first time was because, and I'll never forget it, we were walking through Kirkgate Market in Bradford, my husband and I, and one of my school friends walked past, and I introduced him. I said, "This is my husband, this is, and I'll see you later." And because I said, "see you later," which anybody in England would have understood what I meant, but because I said, "see you later," that was the first time he hit me and he raped me, because he said I was having an affair, because I said I'd see you later. Now, I said, see you later, somebody in America, doesn't mean I'm going to see you again for the rest of my life, but that's just, so the cultural differences in little anomalies, and how we speak, how we interact, how our body language is, how the language we use is absolutely phenomenal. From somebody who's raised in Great Britain and somebody who's raised, in my case, in Pakistan. Are you allowed to shake the hand of a man without having anything sexual involved? And, Lord help me, the amount of men hands I shake, and how the amount of men I give a good hug to, and it's like, how many affairs am I capable of having? So there's that side to it, which is the cultural differences, language differences, the expectations, I remember, I've been blessed in many ways. I was blessed even throughout my mum's campaign and throughout working with SBS and SYR, picketing, whatever. I've had the experience of really, really strong feminist women being able to influence me and tell me what it's like and what's right and what's wrong. So I've been really lucky to have that kind of exposure. And in that exposure, I remember saying, the conditioning that I had when I went to Pakistan at 12, some of the things which I would not expose my child to now, my daughter, is that the measure of a woman is how thin the chapati is, how round it is, how many men can walk through the door and you can feed them within an hour. That was your measure of how good a woman you are. It wasn't about what's in here. It wasn't about who you are. It was about what you can deliver, which was expected of you from a woman in that society, and that was your role. That was it. It wasn't about education. It wasn't about, we were in a rural village in Pakistan. So I remember having these conversations, and don't get me wrong, let's get it right. I'm really proud that I can cook for so many people. I'm really proud that I can make a fantastic round chapati. I'm really proud that I can make so many curries, but was that the right way to have been, I understand that now, but was that the right way for me from a cultural perspective to have learned cooking? So my daughter makes me a cup of tea now. She's got it right. She's 11 years old. She wants to make a chapati. She turns them into love hearts, and that's her way of learning how to make chapatis. It's not because you are expected to feed an army. It's not because you are expected to feed a husband. It's because you share that. A marriage is about sharing. A good marriage is about sharing responsibilities. There's nothing to say those gender roles and that stereotypical attitude we have towards women. My brother loves cooking. My little boy loves baking. And that the cultural differences are phenomenal. I cannot stress enough how much that impacts on a marriage. And in Islam, we are told a marriage is half your iman and half your faith. And I used to, because I'm not very well versed in theology, or my relationship with my Allah Ta'ala is between me and Him, and I'm on a journey like anybody is. But I try to be a good person. And what that tells, I didn't understand. I didn't get the concept of what does that mean. And actually, when I ask somebody, and what it means is that you are two personalities who are coming together, and you have to build tolerance of each other, of each other's habits, of when when if your husband leaves his socks and you've got OCD and you want him in the wash basket, you want whether he leaves his cup or whether you leave a cup somewhere, it's habits. You're two different people coming together. And you learn tolerance, and you have to, and that is a big test for a human being. So marriage isn't, cut out Mills and Boone story where everything fits into place. It's not like that. You have to understand each other. It's not about agreeing. It's not about disagreeing. When you disagree, it doesn't mean that you're going to fall out. It's about accepting people's differences and tolerance. And then I understood what marriage really meant and why it was such a big test. Now, imagine that test with two people who want to come together and who have met naturally. And then imagine that test and apply it to somebody whose cultures are so different. And actually, I might not want to know about that culture because it's not been through choice. It's been imposed upon me. So if I went on holiday and I fell in love with a country and I fell in love with its people, I'm really interested in that, and I fell in love with somebody there. And that's something I choose to do. But if it's something that's imposed on me, am I going to have that tolerance? Marriage isn't just a walk in the park. So to actually commit somebody to a lifetime of not just that challenge of a normal challenge when you're in a relationship of choice, but a relationship where you're meeting the code of honour and the code of respect and upholding, and not being able to walk away and not be happy in that relationship, it's a life sentence. It literally is a life sentence, that doesn't sit right with my human values. That doesn't sit right with what I want for my children. That doesn't sit right for any child, for any person, whether they're underage or whether they're overage. A forced marriage is a forced marriage. Coercion is coercion. Whichever way you wrap it up, whether it's emotional blackmail, whether it's family pressure, it's guarding izzat and honour. It's a misguided concept of honour. That does not protect your honour. What gives you your honour and what gives you your pride, which is embryonic in us, and it's conceived with us at the stage where we're conceived. It literally is through our blood. But I'll tell you what honour is and what pride is. Honour is to be able to say you're living a life which makes you happy, where you are good to other people, where you have responsibility for yourself, beyond yourself, for your communities, and you can make a difference, whether that's in your home, whether that's in your neighbourhood, whether that's in your community, your country, or the wider world. And you do as what makes you, and you live to your potential, and you're happy meeting your potential without fear, not because you are forced to do anything, but because it's what you want to do. I'm in a job where I'm absolutely loving it. I love my job. I love doing what I do. And you know what? It gives me I sleep well in the night, and I think everybody has that right to live free of fear. I think it's our birthright. It is absolutely birthright. And until we don't get it right from a human rights perspective, then we're not going to address this issue. So for me, it has to come from, you can get a bunch of girls, and I get it. You can get a bunch of Pakistani girls and put them in a room and talk about forced marriage. Or you can get a bunch of young children, young people from mixed heritage, mixed race, genders, everything, and talk about what a brilliant marriage looks like. And you'll have addressed the issue of forced marriage, and you'll have empowered the community. So, for me, you don't have to be black to get racism. You don't have to be a woman to get feminism. And just like that, you don't have to be a Pakistani or an Indian or South Asian to understand forced marriage. You can still support your friends, your people in that community. So I think that's the approach we need to take. Finally, it's really, I admire what you've talked about. I admire people who come forward and raise their head and talk about their personal experiences. I understand it's not easy. I'm somewhat used to it now. But what I would say in terms of a criminalisation, I'm not convinced that criminalisation has addressed the issue of forced marriage. We had one conviction in Cardiff last year, and I remember speaking about it on the day. It wasn't what it was set out to do in terms of the victims that we normally have. So I'm not convinced that it did address that. Did it empower young people, or does it give them a dialogue to use, well, this is illegal, so you can't do it anymore? Perhaps, but I'm not sure there's enough data on that to support that. I accept we'll never go back in terms of undoing what we've done, but I do think that there has to be, you know, I've read only today The Guardian reported the youngest victim, potentially an 8-year-old boy, forced marriage in West Yorkshire, and being from Bradford and West Yorkshire, you know, we've got the most active force, but we also have, I also sit on the Home Affairs Select Committee, and out of 43 forces, there's more than 30 of them that are just not right and just don't get the issue of forced marriage. So there's lots of work to be done, and I did challenge the College of Policing on that yesterday. So I think there's lots of work to be done, but some of that is within the communities, because the communities have their own solutions. We just need to change the narrative, and we need to empower that narrative to come through, and for people like us to have conversations like this. But in this room, we're preaching to the converted, let's be clear. The work that needs to be done isn't necessarily, whilst this is brilliant to have this conversation, the work that has to happen is in the schools, in the communities, with the mothers, and to change that mindset. So that's the challenge for all of us leaving here. Thank you.
Naz, thank you very much for that excellent